can't believe we've made it this far, but this is Toasting the Classics' 100th episode, so we decided to go big and deal with a movie that everyone calls a classic, Quentin Tarantino's 1994 opus Pulp Fiction. On the bright side, this movie ushered in a new era of independent and thoughtful films like Clerks, Swingers, and American Beauty that lasted until the end of the millennium. On the dark side, it inflicted upon us a slew of tossed-together pictures about wisecracking, bizarrely intelligent gangsters like Lucky Number 11 and Things to Do in Denver When You're Dead. You take the good with the bad, I guess. Your hosts were both an impressionable age when this movie changed everything, but how does it hold up as we've mellowed into jaded middle age? Join us as we sip on $5 bourbon-laced milkshakes and find out. It's time for episode 100 of Toasting the Classics, Pulp Fiction. Welcome to Toasting the Classics, the podcast where we take something that people call a classic and we talk about it while we drink something inspired by the classic. By some miracle, we have managed to survive for 100 episodes as of today, so we decided to go big or go home. Clint, what did we choose?
And for this episode, we chose Pulp Fiction, the opus for Quentin Tarantino.
I think that's a fair statement. Do you think it's his best, or should we approach that later?
I think we should approach it later. I do have thoughts on it. I'm the one that kind of picked it. So Dave originally picked Reservoir Dogs. He said, let's go with Tarantino.
We've been dancing around Tarantino the entire time we've been doing this. We mentioned him on, I don't know, almost all the episodes.
Quite a few.
Even the one about books from ancient Rome, we probably managed to mention Quentin Tarantino.
Hopefully so. So that's certainly a good figure to go with, but who do you go with? And so I figured, it's called the classics. I know Reservoir Dogs will always be held up as his first break the mold type of thing, but Pulp Fiction, that made him. He could have been just like his writing partner Avery could have been like, he wrote Killing Zoe and directed Killing Zoe. Mm-hmm. A great movie in its own right, independent film, but he's never really reached that next level.
Avery did some kind of garbagey movies, like some big box office type stuff. Like he wrote, I think, Silent Hill or directed Silent. It's not good movies, Tarantino never made that leap to doing summer blockbuster type stuff. Franchise. He's always been an auteur, right? Like his whole career.
Yeah, exactly. But this is what put him on that level, I think. And it allowed him to kind of forge his own path. He didn't have to take the schlocky stuff, just to survive.
Right. What was your Pulp Fiction experience? What did you when you went to see it? Back 30 years. By the way, this is the 30th anniversary of Pulp Fiction.
Yeah, it is the 30th anniversary. So
a little bit of more meaning.
I don't think I saw this in the theater when it came out. Now I remember when it was out, but you got to understand this was like an artsy movie. This wasn't a big budget Armageddon type of thing. I don't know what else was in the theater. Let's look that up. Let me look that up real quick. And
around the same time as Forrest Gump, and a lot of people were annoyed that Forrest Gump won the Best Picture in that same year. And there's another really big one in '94. Shawshank Redemption came out.
So Forrest Gump, Shawshank Redemption. I did see Forrest Gump in the theater, and it was.
I did also.
It was a huge movie. Big box office hit.
I did not see Shawshank.
I didn't see Shawshank either.
I loved that movie, but I didn't end up seeing it until after the Academy Awards and everybody was talking about it. So I went and I got it on tape and saw it. But both of these, Forrest Gump, I think I just went with my dad, and I had no idea what it was. And I remember being horrified by the way Tom Hanks was talking in the first minute of the movie. I was like, what is happening right now? What is that accent he's doing? Yeah. And then obviously I have a heart beating in my chest. I ended up loving that movie. I think anybody that says they don't like that movie is just dead inside. I think that's a fun movie. I think I know why people don't like it who are serious film people, but it just, you can show it to a kid today and they still love it. And that's one of my tests for whether a movie is.
So I'm looking at the list, the full list of other movies that were out with Pulp Fiction. Okay. The Specialist with Sylvester Stallone.
I don't remember that.
I don't remember seeing that either. The River Wild. I don't remember that one.
I know that's
Pulp Fiction, Forrest Gump. Only You. Don't know that one. New Nightmare. I think that's a Nightmare on Elm Street.
Yeah.
Quiz Show. I remember that one. Jason's
I remember that one. Yeah, I think he won Best Actor over John Travolta for that.
Do you remember Stargate? Remember that one?
Yeah.
That one I saw in the theater.
That was earlier too. That's funny. Okay. I was really underwhelmed by that. I thought that was going to be really cool, and I did not like it very much.
You've got a bunch of them: Time Cop, Shawshank Redemption, Terminal Velocity, Clear and Present Danger. This list is like 40 movies long,
right?
And we're used to a time when you've got 4 movies in the theater now.
Yeah.
But this is a time when there were Like there could be 20, 25 movies in theaters all at one time, right?
Yeah.
Because that's what
And
we had. We had that.
and they were the biggest thing. They were the biggest cultural thing that existed aside from,
Yeah,
pop
right.
music, I guess, on some films. Like when Jurassic Park came out, it's all anybody talked about for a couple of weeks. It's
Yeah,
a completely
yeah, for
different
sure.
paradigm for movies than what we have today.
Right. Yeah.
I go to the movies I don't even, honestly, I love the movies, and I'm even finally starting to just be like, this is too expensive, man. It's $100 to go
Yeah.
take wife and kids to the movies,
Easily. Easily. Yeah.
and then it's just something that's like a remake of something, or a TV show that existed in the 40s that's now turned into there's no original material. It's just kind of
Yeah,
a
they're-
bummer. I don't know, maybe things are going to get better with the writer's strike being in the past a little longer and with COVID being over, but I don't know, man. I just don't see people paying the money, like regular people paying that kind of money to go see movies. But
Spielberg had a kind of an interesting, and they had talked to him about the future of cinema, and he said the future is going to be what going to the theater was in the 1800s. It's a big, like it's a night out. So you pay
right.
$60 for two people to go, and you have drinks and you have dinner, and you're watching the film, and it's like a big event, right? Instead of just
yeah. I agree with that. And I think that first of all, to me, it's not even like the theater. I think it's going to be like opera. It's expensive and glamorous, and it's something that only 2% of people in America are going to do.
Right.
Like it's too expensive. Like I have a fairly affluent family, and I'm like, do I really want to spend $80
right.
to go to the movies? That's crazy.
Well, that's why streaming has gotten so. For $500 now, you can get a 50-inch plasma, or not even plasma, LED TV, right?
Yeah.
Another couple $100 for a surround sound system. For $20 a month or $50 a month or whatever, you got a streaming service. So, it makes a lot more sense. But I do like the event. I like the event of going to the theater.
I love it. I
movie.
miss that. I miss going like when Star Wars comes out or something, and it's this big thing. Like I miss that. That's what's missing. We talked about this on the YouTube podcast. That's what's missing for everybody today is shared big experiences like that that everybody's talking about. And I don't care. The internet brings us all kinds of wonderful things, but it has absolutely killed the shared experience, the shared cultural experience.
Yeah.
It's why we're obsessed with generations now. Because the generations don't share anything. If you're 8, you watch one thing on the internet, and if you're 15, you watch a different thing, and if you're 30, something else. And old guys apparently all watch Joe Rogan. I don't know, but
well, I'll tell you this. So as far as Pulp Fiction goes, I was aware of it, and that's the thing is, it's not that I was unaware of it, but I saw it as like this artsy type of schlocky thing, right? Certainly highbrow, artsy. It's just it wasn't my thing. I was in a fraternity at the time. I was in the middle of college and trying to figure that out. This is before my turn to an English major and kind of being into a little bit more of the highbrow stuff. Anyway,
before you turn to the douche side of the force, I've always dabbled a little bit with the douche side, if I'm being honest.
Yeah.
Like I do.
Well,
it's actually I take it back. I've always known some people who were artsy types because I remember my friend Joe, still a friend of mine. He's done this podcast with me before. He always he would read these magazines and he would go to he would go to record stores and stuff. He just knew about movies. And I went over to his house one time in I think it was 9th grade, and he had the videotape of Reservoir Dogs, and he was like, "You've got to watch this movie. It's about these incredibly racist bank robbers." And I was like, "That's a really weird intro to the film, but fine." So we sat down, and I was just blown. I was like, "I've never seen a movie like this before. I love this movie. Watched it over and over."
So the way I got into Pulp Fiction was we had one of those guys in my fraternity. So Pulp Fiction cleared the way for independent movies. Okay.
Yeah, created Miramax pretty much.
Yes. This allowed Avery to make Killing Zoe. So in my fraternity, this is back when Blockbuster was still around. Somebody went and got Killing Zoe.
Yeah.
And put it in. Have you ever seen that movie?
I have. I saw it. Okay. I got it at Blockbuster, and my college girlfriend and I watched it at her place.
And so I was like, there's a story to this movie, and it's an incredible movie, and it keeps you tangled up until the end. And then from there, I found out about Pulp Fiction. And then the fraternity, all the guys, we all watched it in the common room, and all of us were like, holy crap, this is the best thing since sliced bread. And we're like, why didn't we know about this? They didn't sell it as a comedy back then, but it's funny. It's a dark comedy. It's funny.
It's a dark comedy. Yeah.
That's not how they sold it. They sold it as some film noir, very highbrow, like you have to smoke skinny cigarettes.
No, it's really funny.
understand this,
It's really just a
and
funny movie all the way
it
through, like a
is.
dark comedy. Yeah.
And so that's what introduced me. And then after I watched that, then I found Reservoir Dogs, watched that,
Yeah.
Curdled, which is something that he funded. I watched that.
I learned about Curdled today, reading about Esmeralda
Reading
Villa.
about it, yeah,
I'd never
yeah.
heard about that before.
I made Regina watch that back in the day. But I mean, it's just all these independent films, and that's like we go to Blockbuster, and that's all I do is like Armageddon. This thing sucks, or something.
Yeah,
And let's go to the independent section. And so then I became kind of a not at all film nerd or film snob, but story driven movies.
Armageddon's a good example because who stars in Armageddon? Bruce Willis.
Bruce Willis,
He
yeah,
would not have been in Armageddon if it hadn't been for Pulp Fiction.
right,
His career
right,
was dead, completely
yeah,
dead, which is weird because it's what, like 7 years since Die Hard? It seemed like
yeah.
an eternity to me at the time. I was like, oh yeah, Bruce Willis, I remember him. But
Well, he was in all these
Hudson,
movies that didn't do too well, and
yeah,
I watched a lot of those
Hudson
movies.
Hawk was a big flop, and that was a couple
And I
years ago.
liked that movie. I liked Hudson
I
Hawk.
liked
It
it
was
okay.
fun.
I actually did
Yeah.
like it okay, but it was not, I think, what people wanted
I
from
mean,
that.
it's stupid,
But
but it was funny. Fun.
oftentimes, I think we've talked about my theory of box office flops before, is that if you give people something different from what you told them you were giving them, it cuts into your
Yeah.
box office. People
Yeah, for
go to a
sure.
movie with a plan to see a certain kind of film, and if they go and they see Hudson Hawk when they were expecting a completely different film that wasn't funny at
Yeah.
all or silly, they're going to be
Yeah.
pissed. They're not going to like that movie.
Yeah.
So,
The other one is John Travolta. This movie
exactly. Yeah.
like
Yeah.
launched John Travolta's second life. If it weren't for this, he'd be a nothing. Because he
That's
wasn't
right.
nothing.
He
Was
was
a nothing.
well. I was thinking about this, and it was so he had his first act, right, which is obviously the disco films and like
Yeah.
Urban Cowboy and stuff like that,
Uh-huh.
like
Yeah.
75 to 80, early 80s. And then he had
Yeah.
Look Who's Talking, which is like a
Yes.
corny movie, but was a huge success. And he's in both of those movies. So he was kind of dead. And then again, it's like 6 or 7 years until this one. So he had a real huge comeback. And then
Yeah.
I think Battlefield Earth was the bridge too far. I don't think anybody recovers from that. I never saw it.
Yeah. But then he went off to do like he did Face Off, he did Broken Arrow,
Yep.
so he did a bunch of like high budget. John Woo, is that the guy's name? He was listing, so to speak, if he was a ship.
Definitely. And
Um,
I see it quoted as being that it created Samuel Jackson's career. And it's like, okay, Samuel Jackson is in Phantom Menace and Die Hard 3 because he was in this, but he was
yes.
in Jurassic Park. And he was notable in
Yeah, but he had a tiny
kind
part,
of a funny, it's a small part, but he's definitely in a big blockbuster
and
movie.
his arm is more famous, more
His
memorable
arm is
than.
more, yeah. So what are we drinking?
Okay, well, I'm just drinking bourbon.
I've got a certain kind of heroin that's grown in the Harz Mountains of Germany called Madman,
Nice.
and I'm just going to shoot
Nice.
that up while we do the
That's
show.
awesome. You should do that. Yeah, that's
a lot of
fantastic.
fun.
Yeah.
I've got my gear.
Yeah.
I'm ready. I got my gear in the bottom of my shoe, like in Train Spotting, and I'm ready. I'm ready to go.
Unfortunately, England is an island, so I wasn't able to get very much from there. But
what I did do instead, as I proposed to you, was make a $5 milkshake. But
Yes.
actually, as John Travolta suggests, splash a little bourbon in it, which is what I did. So I have a
was it
bourbon.
$5?
It was a $5 shake, which sounds totally reasonable by today's standards.
Yeah, I know, right?
You'd pay less than that at McDonald's.
That's milk and ice cream for $5.
You don't put no bourbon in it.
I gotta try this shake.
Speaking of irritating accents, John Travolta's accent in this film, it was kind of a hurdle for me to get over the first time I saw it.
Was
like,
it?
Why is he talking like that? But he made it up, and Tarantino let him stick with it, and apparently it was his acting choice. So it was like the worst bad white guy black accent that I've ever heard in my life. It's
so you got a $5 milkshake from Jack Rabbit Slims.
Jack Rabbit Slims, yeah.
Don't be
a rectangle.
Square, Daddy-o.
She definitely makes a rectangle, but
I know, but she says don't be square, Daddy-o.
I've had enough kids going through elementary school math that I know that a square has 490-degree angles, is a quadrilateral, and it's all the same.
Well, I think she was strung out on something.
That's true. She was really high on cocaine at the time, so there's that. That does tend to make you forget your math. Yeah, I actually was really disappointed when I saw this movie the first time in the theater because I had loved Reservoir Dogs so much. And this was different.
I see.
It wasn't exactly the same.
Yeah.
And Reservoir Dogs is nonlinear, so I kind of knew that was coming. Yeah. I kind of came away with a feeling like, yeah, I saw Reservoir Dogs. This was okay, but I saw this the first time when it was called Reservoir Dogs.
Yeah. I see.
And then over time, as
Interesting.
I rewatched the movie a bunch of times, I really grew to like it. There's just a lot in it. In a way that I think Reservoir Dogs is more taut. It's shorter. It's got exactly the number of minutes in the film that it needs to have. I think Pulp Fiction is a wonderful movie and is doing a lot of crazy postmodern stuff that is not happening in Reservoir Dogs.
Yeah.
I think I've said this before on the podcast. I think a movie should be 2 hours. I think if your movie's more than 2 hours, you screwed up. Cut something. You know?
Yeah.
Which brings me to a question I had for you. What would you cut? I have a feeling I know which scenes you're going to talk about.
What would I cut?
Now, maybe you don't have to cut 36 minutes, but let's say you had to cut something.
Yeah, the Quentin Tarantino scene. So it would be it would be
you'd be getting rid of one of the most distinctive and hilarious lines in movie history.
The Bonnie, was it the Bonnie situation?
When he's there and he's like, "Did you see the sign on my house that says dead? You know what storage?"
Yeah.
That is uproariously funny for all the wrong reasons when he says.
Yes, it's terrible. Spike Lee called him out. Okay, well, what would you cut? What did you think I was going to say?
I think you got to work on Butch's girlfriend. That's slow. I think that's it's the kind of thing you can do in a 10 episode HBO show. You can have a scene that shows the intimate and weak side of a boxer and flesh out the character. But in a film, I don't know, man. That goes on for a long time.
Well, yeah, she does. There are some subtle things that you don't get for the first time around. Like
the whole film's like that. There's chock full of details.
Like the brushing her teeth.
Yeah.
And then afterwards, she brushes her teeth again.
Yeah.
You're like, why is she brushing her teeth again? Oh, that's why she's brushing her teeth again.
Yeah. But there's a lot of things he's doing. Like I just recently watched Jackie Brown because I was kind of getting interested in his work again. And there's this great scene where he does this long tracking shot of Samuel Jackson walking out to his car with, I think it's Chris Rock, right? No, Chris Tucker. And the two of them drive all the way around the building. And you see them drive all over. And it goes on for like 10 minutes, but it's perfect. And it's right out of Once Upon a Time in the West. It's the way things are done by Sergio Leone. Those slow build up. It tells a great story. I just think you're asking a heck of a lot out of an audience to have something go on that long.
Here's the thing about Quentin Tarantino. I'm going to sum up the man right now. Okay. Everybody ready for this? Okay.
Yes.
He is the ultimate film nerd. The ultimate film nerd.
That's true. Yeah. I think that's true.
He worked in a place called, was it Film Archive or Movie Archive?
I don't remember. I know he worked in a video store for 5 years though. Yeah.
Yeah. And I think part of the title of that video store was like Archive. So it's like a museum of film. Okay.
It's awesome.
In a rental place. So it's like the ultimate nerdy place. That's where Avery was too. That's where they met. This is the ultimate film nerd. And he knows, like in every movie that he does, every scene is an homage to something that you've never seen before. Right. He has. And it was like this movie made in 1942 by this French director. It was this movie made in 1963 by this obscure English director that you've never seen. And on and on and on and on. Like everything is an homage to something that he's watched, which is amazing, right?
Yeah. Yeah, it really is.
I mean, nothing is new. Anything is reinvented. That's all art is, right? Nowadays.
Do you want to know what a film nerd he is? When he was trying to persuade John Travolta to do the movie, John Travolta came over to his house and the two of them hung out and they played the Welcome Back Kotter board game for several hours, hanging out with each other.
That's awesome.
And he just happened to have that in his house. Yeah, that's
it's
so
awesome.
Like today where you could buy something like that on eBay instantaneously. Like he must have had that item at his house.
Here's why it works though, because that's what he loves.
Yeah.
Like this guy is a true collector, enthusiast, whatever you want to call it. So like a film nerd actually isn't a good way to put it. Because a film nerd is just somebody that knows a lot of stuff. They're highbrow. Yeah. Maybe they like try to impress girls or something like that at parties or something with their
somehow I don't think Quentin
or all their knowledge or their trivia, right? Yeah. But this guy celebrates it. Like he's like, oh, I love this one part. I remember this part in that 1962 film, the werewolf or whatever, and I'm going to use that one little scene. I'm sure you did all the same research that I did. So the research about the briefcase, which we could talk about. So there's this glow from the briefcase, right?
Yeah.
Well, there's a scene from a movie in like 1963 that does that exact thing, right? And then there's also Repo Man.
Oh, yes. Okay. I wrote that down. That down because I was like, that's Repo Man, right? That's not the Repo Man. It must be. Okay, good.
Right. And so that was like 83 or 84 or something like that. So, I mean, like there are these exact things that were nods to this other thing. So it's not just I'm a nerd, but it's like I truly love this stuff. I want to use all this stuff So in a way, all he's sort of doing is he's reshackling everything that was already made,
Yeah, and so
and just
I
stringing
think
it all
that's.
together, right?
But
So,
that's kind of what a lot of the great filmmakers of our lifetime, that's what they're doing, right? Woody
mhm,
Allen does that, George Lucas did that, Steven Spielberg does a lot of that, except Quentin Tarantino, I think, is drawing from a much more obscure source, but he's also the video
yeah,
gen. George Lucas had to
yes,
go
well,
to
that's
the
true.
movies to see everything he
Yeah,
ever saw. Whereas
right,
Quentin
right.
Tarantino, and I worked in a video store, by the way, and it was great. I used to take home 2 movies every day. I used to watch movies while
Mhm,
I was at the store. And I got
mhm.
through a lot of movies I would have never seen otherwise. And I only worked there for like 3 or 4 months. It wasn't a long
So,
term job,
so
but
it's kind of like Clerks then, in the
it
movies
was
that you
exactly
watch.
like Clerks. It was right around the time those it
Oh,
was
really?
90,
Think
97.
carefully about, because what did you always watch in Clerks?
We had a section of the video store that was behind a red curtain. And so people would
Okay,
come
all
out,
right.
and
So,
it was like the only place in my town where you could get dirty movies, right? So people would come out and
so it
they'd
was
rent
like
these
Clerks
movies.
then. Yeah, that's
And
awesome.
I would
That's
estimate
funny.
that in a shift, 3 or 4 times a night, I'd get somebody come out and they'd say, "Hey, do you guys carry gay porn?" And I'd be like, "No, we don't have any of that." And finally, I went to the owner and I was like, "Listen, man, like people are asking for this like 3 times a day. Like, why don't you carry, gay pornography?" And he was like, "My daughters work in this store." And
Oof.
I've never heard a more incongruent answer. I was like, "But
Yeah,
it's
that
okay
doesn't
that
make a
there's
lot of sense, does it?
okay, I
Yeah.
get why you wouldn't want them being around pornography, but why is gay being singled out? Like, there's some horrible stuff here. Like,
Yeah. Hey, we have standards, Dave.
yeah,
We
exactly.
have
I was just kind
standards.
of like,
So
I was like, all right, whatever, you're the owner. I
don't
might
be
have to cut
sick.
that. Yeah, but yes, I thought it was so the
Um,
Spike Lee thing. I put a pin in that before, but
yeah,
I told you when I first saw Reservoir Dogs, my friend Joe was like, it's this movie about these really racist bank robbers. And it put like a
yeah,
spin on the film for me because like as a white guy, I would have watched that movie and I would have registered that they said the N-word, but I didn't
yeah,
register it as being like when you make a 1 sentence statement about this film, that's one of the
yeah,
things you mentioned. But my friend's black, so he's like,
right.
okay, I have to explain that I still like this movie, even though people are dropping the N-word every 5 seconds.
Yeah.
So I always thought about that. I was like, yeah, that is a really strange choice that he made. But I had 2 things I thought about. And I think what he's trying to say there is that, when they use that word, that's the moment where I'm like, ooh, these are bad people. I've already seen them shoot
Uh,
people, cut off people's ears, set somebody on fire. And I'm
yeah.
just like, whatever, they're bank robbers. But boy, if they use politically incorrect, I mean, okay, it's
Yeah.
beyond politically incorrect. It's completely politically incorrect and horrible to say that. But
Yeah.
I think he's making a statement about the impact that has and how inured we are
Mm,
to crime and violence in film. That we're like,
mm,
oh, now that's a bridge too far. Now I don't like this person, which is kind of
yeah.
ridiculous when you think about it. But it's totally the way I felt.
Yeah.
It's 100% the reaction I
Huh.
had. So,
Okay. So what about it? What
so
about it in
what I
the dead inward storage, the dead, all that? What about all of that then
Same
in
thing. It's the
Pulp
same
Fiction?
thing. I think he's just
Yeah.
trying to show these guys are scumbags and trying to get across get across. First of all, that use of the word is just downright funny. Like, and the Sam Jackson, I think there's a character thing going on there where Sam Jackson is like he needs this guy. He can't just kill this guy, and he is biting his lip as he
Yeah.
wants to shoot that guy in the face when he says that. He's
Well,
getting in
what's
his
interesting about
face.
it is Bonnie. Bonnie
Yeah.
is black.
Bonnie's supposed to be black, right? Exactly. So I
Yeah.
think that he's supposed to be
So,
a white guy who thinks he can get away with it. Like he's got what's the thing they say on Seinfeld? He's got like black joke license. He's got like a license.
oh, right. Oh,
So
The Jew joke license.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
and which obviously just makes him a complete a-hole, but whatever. So,
right. Right. Huh.
but it's a really
Maybe.
funny scene. Have you seen Taxi Driver recently?
Not recently. No.
So there's a scene where Martin Scorsese's in the film and he shows
Yes.
up.
Okay. I know that
Robert
scene. That's a weird scene because he's like, have you seen what a 44 will do to a woman's blah blah
Yeah,
blah?
but
Yeah.
he's going off
Yeah.
because his wife is sleeping with a black guy, and he's going
Black guy.
off
Yeah.
on the N-word over and over again. And I was like, I know Quentin Tarantino loved Martin
Yeah.
Scorsese. You know how I know he loves
Yeah.
Martin Scorsese? This is close to my biggest surprise too. The scene with Uma Thurman with the adrenaline needle,
Uh-huh.
right, where she has to get the
Yeah.
shot through the heart. That is
Right. Uh-huh.
taken right out of a documentary by Martin Scorsese, where he's interviewing one of his friends who's a drug addict and tells that story about someone he saw it happen to. Like
Interesting.
right down to the last word of what's happening. And that's Tarantino just took
Yeah.
that, put it in his movie, which works. It's one of the most effective,
Yeah.
like tense scenes of the movie. It's like Hitchcock
Yeah.
watching that needle with the the adrenaline dripping out of the end of it before. That was, I don't think I actually watched that the first time I saw the movie. I think I actually had to turn away from that. But you know what I never noticed about that scene is Roxanne Arquette, obnoxious wife,
at the end, she's like cool.
Yeah, but she's got a million piercings, right? All over her body.
Oh yeah.
So that's why she's staring at the needle going into Uma Thurman like she's like lusting after it almost, because she's got a thing.
Well, you know what was funny? What was funny about that is like today, like that's common. Back then,
the piercings yeah.
was different. Well, that was different. He's like, hey, you know, if you want to, I'll hook you up with what's her name? Is that the one with all the crap in her face? He doesn't say that. No, man, that's my wife. Oh, dude, I'm sorry.
There's 2 or 3 moments in the film where John Travolta is irreplaceable, and the laugh he does and the pat on the back he gives Eric Stoltz after he says that, and his reaction to when she says no. That's my whatever. Wife. That's my wife. That's his laugh, you're like, okay, that's why that guy's a movie star.
I'm sorry, man.
Yeah, it's perfect.
So you know who was supposed to be there instead of Travolta?
Lawrence Fishburne was supposed to play Jules, right?
Right.
Michael Madsen, right? Michael Madsen was supposed to play Vincent Vega.
Michael Madsen, Vincent Vega. Because so Michael Madsen's character in Reservoir Dogs is the brother of Vincent Vega.
Yeah.
It's whatever his character's name is, Vega. Yeah. So, but and
apparently Jimmy's character and Harvey Keitel's character from Reservoir Dogs are related.
Yes.
Which is, I didn't know that. I didn't know that
either. But that one doesn't quite make sense. The Madsen one I can see though, because he and Travolta can kind of between the accent.
Madsen was a big discovery. He was a big discovery in Reservoir Dogs. He was great in that. He kind of makes the film.
But Michael Madsen in Reservoir Dogs was a psychopath, right? And he was made to be a psychopath. That's how his character was made.
Right.
When he just opened fire and everybody killed him for no reason, stuff like that. I don't know if he would have worked as Vincent Vega if it was the same guy.
He had a reason. If they hadn't have done what he told them not to do, they'd still be alive.
But they didn't do anything.
Perfectly good reason. Well, they did something. I don't remember what it was, but
no, they didn't do anything. Everybody said they didn't do anything, and then he shot him anyway.
Oh, okay.
Right. So which again, if you look at Quentin Tarantino's writing, he likes to do, because in From Dusk Till Dawn, there's that scene at the very beginning where they're in a convenience store.
I have almost no memory of this film. I saw it.
So the clerk is in the convenience store. The sheriff deputy walks in and he's like, "Hey, how you doing?" And he's like, "Oh, I'm good. Everything's cool, going good." And blah 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 blah. Yep. Yeah. Okay. Well, you have a good night. And he buys his stuff, and next thing you know, the sheriff's head explodes. and the clerk's like, "What the F did you just do?" He's like, he was making signs to him. Like the bad guy, George Clooney, is like, or no, it was Quentin Tarantino was a psycho. He's like, he was talking to him, he was making signs to him. It's like, no, I wasn't. I was just doing what you said. Blah, blah, blah. So there's this thing about like, just psychopaths just do that for no reason. Anyway.
The same themes that run through Western movies about violence, like a commentary on when we choose violence, and commentaries on how men establish dominance between one another, are just all through Tarantino movies. It's going on in almost every scene. You know, like Jules and Vincent are interacting, and he's like, "I'm a race car, and you got me in the red," and he's like, "Oh, you a race car?" Like that whole thing is like two very violent men having a conflict with each other that doesn't turn violent, and it's all about, "Oh, I respect you." I mean, he talks to the wolf. He's like, "I respect you. It'd just be nice if you know," and then the way the wolf it keeps it from being violent.
Yeah. And you respect me. Well, let me tell you something. Let me give you some knowledge.
If my help is not appreciated, best of luck, gentlemen.
He's like, I'm here for your help.
Speaking of somebody who's in Taxi Driver, I watched that not too long ago, and Harvey Keitel is just lethal. He's
he's cool nuts. Yeah, he is nuts. That whole movie is that movie is absolutely, when you go back and when you watch it the first time, and then you watch it, and then you just take a break from it, and then you go back and you're like, and it's a statement on who's driving your taxi. Who do we know? You know, who is it that is out there in your Uber who's delivering your stuff? That's the taxi driver, right? Everything in that movie, the guy is like one of
this movie, movies. Pulp Fiction. It sounds like we both like this movie a lot, but this movie does not exist without the ministrations of a certain Harvey Weinstein.
Yes.
This movie does not get made with Miramax anyway. If Harvey
Well,
Weinstein doesn't see
okay,
how
all
good
right. So here we go. Okay, let's talk about that for a second. I don't think that's true. This
okay,
movie, Harvey Weinstein was the second out of a list of potentials, and he bid on it, and he said,
yeah,
"We'll fund it." So I don't think this whole trope of Harvey Weinstein and blah blah blah. It's Harvey Weinstein was like I said, the second. I mean, they went to, it wasn't Miramax at first. It was
it was a bunch of
TriStar
different.
or something like that.
Yeah, it was trying like
Yeah,
they
no.
rejected
There's
it. Yeah,
it,
he
it
was
was it
he
was
was talking to everybody in Hollywood for like 2 years trying to get this movie
yeah.
made.
Well, but serious talk though, because they were optioned, and then what
Yeah,
happens is when you get optioned, you get paid for just waiting. Okay, because I've been auctioned before for a book, and so what
right.
happens is they say, look, we are going to go and try to do something with your property. Here's some money to not do anything with your property. So you just sit on it, and we're going to go try to figure it out. So we represent you. We're going to give you some money to do that. Okay.
Okay.
And sometimes it works
Like a,
out,
like a
sometimes it
like
doesn't.
a contractual option to you will agree to keep waiting, and they pay you a certain amount of money per
Right.
month to
Exactly.
keep you waiting.
Because
Okay.
they're paying you to not do it
Right.
yourself,
Yeah.
basically. Right.
That makes
Because
sense.
they think they can do it and make some money. Okay. And so that's what they did. So they optioned the movie, and they went to the first place, got denied, but it was within the same year. Weinstein bid on it, Miramax bid on it. That was the next one in line. It's stupid to say that he saved them or he made them or anything like that.
Uh,
It was a great script, good
the thing
property. A
I
lot of people were interested in it.
the thing I think about with that is like Reservoir Dogs, right? Harvey Keitel's in that. Harvey Keitel is a known actor at that point. He's not like at
Harvey
the top of his
Keitel, Harvey
career in
Keitel produced it.
1992. Yeah.
Harvey
Okay.
Keitel helped make it.
Yeah.
You know,
Okay, that makes sense. That makes sense because I mean he's in
so
it. He's great in it. It created a whole, like
yeah,
we said, second act to his career. But he's not a
right,
nobody at that time. When I saw Reservoir
right.
Dogs, I
No,
recognized
absolutely.
Harvey Keitel's face. I didn't know who he
Yeah,
was because we didn't have IMDb in 1992. But I was like,
yeah.
I know that guy from somewhere. So I
I
don't know
don't
what.
think you know. You think you know. Okay. Sorry, that was my Harvey Tell impression right there. Thank you.
Which reminds me of, speaking of
Hmm.
impressions, it reminds me of the
Yes.
cameos in this film, which they don't have as
Oh
much in
man.
Reservoir Dogs. But one of my favorite Tarantino's is True Romance. And in True Romance and in this film, there are just some amazing cameos. Like when Christopher
Yeah.
Walken shows up for 5 minutes, he is
Yeah.
he just comes off the bench and like runs it
Yeah. I
in
love
for a
that.
touchdown and then just leaves the building right after.
Yeah.
It's phenomenal.
My
Like
favorite line is
he
there's
be
you're
damned.
dead. You're dead. Up his ass.
Yes.
It's just
I had
it's
this
like,
I had
oh
this
geez.
uncomfortable hunk of metal up my
Up
ass.
my ass. I mean,
It's great.
God, it
It's
was
great.
so
And
funny.
he
Yeah.
has a scene just like that. It's a scene between him and on the other side, Dennis Hopper, where the two of them are just hitting back and forth like,
Yeah.
Andre Agassi
Can you
and Arthur
imagine?
Ashe or something. Like
Can
it's
you
phenomenal.
imagine that, like being in that room when they made that?
Yes.
Oh my
Yeah.
God.
And by the way, James
Oh,
Gandolfini is just a minor part in that movie who has a cameo as well.
yeah. Yeah.
And Gary Oldman playing the pimp from Detroit. Like there's just some phenomenal cameos. They're ridiculous. And they're all super memorable. I don't know what was going on. I don't Did he direct that film? Did
I
Tarantino
don't
write it?
know.
Or I can't remember
I,
whether
I don't think he directed it. I think he wrote
okay.
it. I think he wrote that one. He wrote Natural Born Killers.
Yes,
Um,
he did not direct Natural Born Killers. I remember
yeah,
that. He sold
that
that. So
that was
he really Oliver Stone.
Oliver Stone. Thank you. But he wrote a lot, and his writing. Okay, so there's one of my favorite writers. If you've not read any of his work, you should just read his novels. Elmore Leonard,
Yes, I've
which
read a lot of Elmore Leonard.
um,
He did an Elmore Leonard
which
picture.
he
Jackie
did he
Brown.
did
Jackie
Elmore.
Brown.
Yeah, he did. Yeah, exactly. And Elmore Leonard he's famous for dialogue.
Right.
And that's sort of what Quentin Tarantino's thing is, like
Absolutely.
witty dialogue,
Absolutely.
like go back and forth, back and forth, back and forth.
So
And
I may sound like a really stupid person saying this, and I'm willing to put myself out there, but I think the
okay.
way he writes and the drawing
Mhm.
in from all over the English language circa 1994 is like the kind of work that Shakespeare was doing when he was putting together plays. He's creating
Yeah.
ways of talking, and he's so conscious about meter with the way people talk. And one of my
Mhm.
favorite lines in the movie in that way is, "What about you, Lash LaRue? Can you keep your spurs from jingling and jangling?" I don't know if that's iambic pentameter, but it's close. and it's taking in like a reference to an old cartoon show. It's got rhyme. It's got a perfect meter. There's just, when you listen to the script, there's just 100 lines like that where you're like, this guy's not, he would never let somebody improv one of those lines. Those
I don't
lines
think it's definitely not iambic pentameter.
no, it's not, but it's got a meter. It's got a very distinctive meter to it.
Well, it's got a beat to it. Yeah, it's got a beat to it.
Right.
And you can,
what about
you can,
just saying, what about you, Lash LaRue? That's a line of poetry.
Uma Thurman's, well, that was Uma Thurman's, I mean, that's what she did. Like all of her dialogue was sing-songy.
Yes.
It was in meter.
It's never wasted. She never says anything that isn't like thought through. Like when I'll be down in 2 shakes of a lamb's tail. It's just like little things like that. You're like, who says that? That's awesome.
Exactly.
Why don't they put that in the movies more often these days? Like, because people don't, I think, have a control of the language. Up your alley. I think the movie's about rhetoric in some ways. There's some argumentation.
He likes dialogue from 40s and 50s and 60s. Like that's the kind of dialogue he enjoys. You know?
Right. And I miss that. I think that's great. But there's some arguments. There's some conversations that are arguments. Like the conversation they have about foot massages is like it could happen in a courtroom. You know, he's like, what does he say in that? I remember in the second one, he's like, so by that rationale, if a pig had a better personality, he would cease to be a filthy animal. You know, and then basically Samuel Jackson concedes he's lost the argument, and he's like, yeah, but he'd have to be 10 times more charming than that Arnold on Green Acres. And like diffuses losing the argument, and the two of them have a laugh together. It's like about arguments. It's about not an argument per se, but it's about it's rhetorical conversation.
It's dialogue. It's dialogue.
Right.
It's
dialogue.
It's actually speaking to each other. Yeah.
Right. Yeah. Exactly.
And the thing is, like kind of a predisposition to be against that because it takes time. And that's the thing is like if you reduce the dialogue of any of Tarantino's movies to what they would be in anybody else's movies,
right? The
movie would be 50 minutes long.
It'd be nothing.
You know, you'd have 50 minutes of action. You'd have you know, pithy banter, and that was it. You know, but he's about like, and that's what sort of makes it intellectual still is like you have to pay attention. Like if you don't pay attention, like if you were to get up in the middle of Pulp Fiction, the first time you saw it,
right,
and say you had to take a leak really bad, 45 minutes into the film.
That's a little more information than I needed, Clint, but go on.
Okay, so you had to get up and get some popcorn, 45 minutes in the film, because you just had to, because you're bursting from not having popcorn.
Right.
And so you went and got popcorn, came back, sat down, and you said, "What did I miss?"
Good luck.
You couldn't.
Good luck.
Nobody could answer that. Right. It's like, okay, you know,
I say this
let's go back and really talk.
I stole this from somebody else that talks about movies a lot, and I think some films just have a great texture, and you can't miss a minute of a film like that. Like this movie just has like a texture to it. Every single minute of the film is like you're in this world. You almost feel like you could reach out and touch Butch's apartment. You know, it's like this funky, crappy flat in the middle of LA. You know, like, and you could picture that place. The way he walks through that backyard, I'm like, I've been to places like that before. That looks really familiar to me. That's a real place. I mean, it is a real place. One of my other favorite lines, it's not a good iambic pentameter or anything, but with the stabbing scene, when he's like, okay, you have to go down hard through her breastplate. And he's like, do I got to stab her 3 times?
Like, that's right. That's just a throwaway line, though. Yeah. I got to stab her 3 times. It's like, no.
Yeah. And then he's like, and then what's supposed to happen? He's like, well, I'm kind of curious about that myself. Like, I love that kind of line.
I know.
And I think this is why this is way up there in my top movies, because I think a movie that is simultaneously very intelligent, like as in you could say, I mean, I'm saying some dumb stuff about this movie in terms of over intellectualizing it, but you can say those things and not sound like a total fool. And yet the movie is funny. That's the movie I want to watch. That's the movie I want to sit in the movie theater and watch. It's a movie that's brainy and makes me laugh. Like those are the 2 things I want from a film. You know,
on the 30th anniversary of this film, we should try to get Quentin Tarantino to listen to this stupid podcast.
That would be great.
Or nobody else does.
Yeah.
He actually asked me about the set.
I saw him the other day and he asked me if he should listen to it. I was like, nah, don't bother. But next time.
Well, he'd be the 7th person. So, you know.
Is that how many people we've had on the show? We've had 7.
I think so. No. How many people listen? So.
Right. Yeah.
Pulp Fiction. I mean, this is a no-brainer. We're both gonna check this one off as a classic.
I think the more interesting question is whether it's your favorite Tarantino. I think that's
That's what I was going to go to. Well, not only favorite Tarantino, so this is his opus, like I said, according to everybody else. Is there any movie you like better than this? Yeah, and that's the best way to put it, because if this is the hallmark, like what else is there that he's done
there are
that you think is better?
There are bits of his other films that I think are superior.
I know, but let's not do the bits.
Like,
let's do the
for example, the basement sequence in Inglourious Bastards, I think, is one of the best film scenes that's been done since I've been alive. I mean, I love that sequence, and it's just like Michael Fassbender is like discovered in that scene, and he's just phenomenal. Yeah. Everything about that is perfect, and it's great dialogue, and it's so smart, but it's just a little tiny part of the movie. I watched it again recently, and I was like, I don't love this movie from start to finish the same way. I really like True Romance. I think but I don't think he directed it.
True Romance,
I think that's the one I've seen just over and over again, and I always have fun watching it. Like, I just enjoy everything about that film. I haven't seen it in a long time, though.
His writing and directing ones.
Jackie Brown, I watched again.
You got Jackie Brown.
And it was better than I remembered it being. And there's again, that sequence I'm talking about with Chris Tucker is beautiful filmmaking. Like, just absolutely perfect filmmaking. But the movie overall doesn't really work the same way. Reservoir Dogs, I think, like I said, it's more taut. And so maybe that one's just as good as this one in a different kind of way. It looks like a stage play. It takes place like almost all in this one place. There's no fat. There's no fat on the bone. It's just a great film with great dialogue. And as I've gotten older,
that's interesting, because now that I think about it, like the dialogue, it's just all dialogue driven. I mean, it's just all about talking within a space. Yeah.
It might as well be Bertolt Brecht, right? It's like taking place on like a stage, and it's a bunch of guys talking, and there's some action.
And it worked.
And it worked, and it works really well. Exactly. Anyway, Tarantino, by the way, is much worse in this one than he was in Reservoir Dogs. He's a passable actor in Reservoir Dogs. He's terrible in this one. He's funny, but he's bad. Like, she gets off about a half an hour graveyard shift at the hospital. I'm like, do another take, man. You can do better than that.
Right. Yeah. Well, he was trying to make the point.
Graveyard shift at the hospital. Come on, man. You wrote the line yourself, for God's sake. Like,
yeah, I know. I did like the Santa Cruz banana slug shirt.
That's funny.
That was one of my favorite parts.
Like a couple of dorks.
Okay, so
So I would say, Hateful Eight was terrific, but Hateful Eight's kind of isn't it a remake?
No, I don't think so.
No, I thought that was a remake of something else. But that was a lot of fun, and it had a lot of the same things as Reservoir Dogs. It's a bunch of guys, and this time is one of the only times where actually has a female character. This movie, the women are just a liability in Pulp Fiction. Yes. Rosanna Arquette is so annoying. She's just screaming in Lance's ear while he's trying to save somebody's life. Uma Thurman, is a drug addict and almost gets him killed. There's a couple other women that just
But Kill Bill is all about that.
Yeah, I think he's answering some feminist critiques with doing Kill Bill. Definitely, I think he's doing something different.
Okay,
so, like he is with Django. I think with Django, by putting a black man in charge of the movie killing white men, I think he's saying, "How racist could I be?" You know?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
I expect you to enjoy this guy just murdering white people.
All right, if we went down and like talked about all the good things we liked about everything else, or about all those movies, it'll take us forever. Let's do top 3, ranked in order, and then like one quick line about why.
I think for me, it's probably Fiction, Dogs, Romance. But I could honestly shuffle those in any direction.
But Romance, he didn't direct that one, though.
Okay, all right, but that's not eligible. Okay, my bad. So Pulp Fiction, Reservoir Dogs, and then it becomes a little harder because they all are flawed. I think they're much more flawed, the other ones. They're not as chock full of perfect filmmaking. Like there's like Once Upon a Time in the West. I love that. That was a lot of fun. But it was like the other two. It was like
in Hollywood, you mean?
Oh, right, yeah. Once Upon a Time in Hollywood. Yeah, my bad. Yeah, Once Upon a Time in Hollywood.
We did Once Upon a Time in the West.
We did. Well, I think the title of the film is a nod to that one. But yeah, all those other ones are pretty flawed. So I don't think I need a third. If I'm not allowed to include True Romance, I think I like these two about the same. And then, unless I'm forgetting,
come on, you got to pick a third. Come on, don't be like that.
I think Hateful Eight's probably the closest to being a more taut film. I think it's got great actors.
You know what?
I think it's better than those others.
You know what? You just hit upon something that I think is really, that we haven't talked about, that is really kind of key to this. Because you said, like, in your excuses for not doing it, you're like, yeah, but they're all so different. That's exactly right. And isn't that wonderful? Like there are certain things about this director, like the dialogue, the witty dialogue, the banter, the back and forth, the rapid fire stuff. The movies are so different. He does blaxploitation. He does the nod or the homage to the
martial arts, his martial arts film,
the martial arts stuff,
several westerns. He's got a lot of different.
Well, and even when they're not westerns, like the blaxploitation, he does like a nod to Sergio Leone with like the wide, huge shots and stuff like that. I think the fact that they're not so Scorsese, I'm sorry, but his films are so much alike, all of them.
They are
every
now.
single one.
They are now. Yeah, they're all good fellas. They're all good fellas in a different setting.
Yes,
I didn't enjoy The Departed. I thought The Departed was lame. But
okay,
Goodfellas.
So get to Raging Bull, the stuff before that, and like you mentioned, the stuff before Taxi Driver, or even Taxi Driver and below. They're really different. They hit upon like a lot of gritty and kind of violent themes in America and stuff like that. But then after that, he finds this thing and he just like, okay, I'm just going to keep doing that, you know? Yeah, and that's what he keeps doing. And he does a good job. Like Goodfellas, like
the best comparison to me is Blow, which is just the same movie as Goodfellas about a different character.
Yeah, that's good.
I saw that and I was entertained by it, but like I was like, I already saw Goodfellas. And Goodfellas is probably my favorite Scorsese film. I love that movie. I've seen that movie like 100 times. I'm never bored.
I think a lot of people feel the same way. Yeah. But the point is, like,
I have a family connection to that film. Did you know about that?
No, I didn't.
My brother-in-law is Ray Liotta. The whole family, everybody in the family is named Ray Liotta, and the Ray Liotta from the film is his cousin. They all knew each other. Yeah. His dad used to go to Disney World with Ray Liotta, the actor, when they were kids. Like, he's part of the family. And my brother-in-law is the guy who got drafted to play for the White Sox. And when he got drafted, everybody was like, Ray Liotta, blah, blah, blah. They're talking about it. Did you have any surprises? And I'm guessing they'd be in the research, obviously. There's nothing,
let's see. Okay, hold on.
New in the film
let
itself.
Me think. I guess surprises would all be all of like the pre-production. Like Avery, for example, his friend Avery dropped writing credits to this film, which is incredible. I'm sure he was paid back later. Also, that I think, if I remember correctly, the highest salary paid to any actor was to Bruce Willis, and it was like $110,000 for this movie.
Well, that was a good investment by him.
And so, because they had $8.5 million to make this entire film, and that was the entire budget. Okay, so $8.5 million, and so what they did is they said, "Look, abysmal salary, and then a profit share." So they all made a ton of money. Like sure. Travolta made nothing on this movie. Like they got paid nothing. And not only that, but if I remember correctly, like they were paid weekly. They were all paid the same amount, no matter how much they made. They're all paid like $2,000 a week or something stupid like that. Like they were, we would call now a pittance for A-level celebrities. So I guess the surprise for me,
the whole strategy, though, right? The whole strategy was to take people who had. I mean, John Travolta was an A-list star in the 70s and 80s, but he's definitely taken a hit by 1994.
Though I don't think he looked at actors and actresses like you're a big name actor. I'm gonna put you in my movie.
No.
I think he looked at people like
ability.
Yeah. He was looking like who fit. Like who fits this part?
I think the way he casts, especially back then, is like Moneyball. And Billy Bean is like, listen, this guy's not getting paid as much, but he walks all the time. And actually, like John Travolta's smile.
So value. So it's all about value.
Yeah.
Value, not cost. Because like Madsen was an unknown quantity. Madsen ended up doing Wyatt Earp with Kevin Costner.
Not a great choice.
So that's why he didn't do Pulp Fiction, right? Yeah, I know, bad choice.
Yeah.
And he even says, like, I regret that. Tarantino's like, okay, what's some other Italian guy that I can get for this that can do that part? Travolta. And again, he's a fan of old movies and stuff. He's like, yeah, okay, Travolta will do it. So get him instead. And so he casts unknown quantities, not because they're unknown, but because like Pam Grier for
well, she was supposed to be in this one. She was supposed to play Rosanna Arquette's part. So he cast her in a different movie that, again, she was big in the 70s in blaxploitation movies. I don't think he goes for They talk about Pam Grier
Do
in
they really?
Reservoir Dogs. Yeah, yeah, they're talking about Pam
I
Grier
didn't
and
know.
"You under arrest, sugar." They like talk about that line
Oh,
from
yeah,
the
I
movies.
can't remember that. Yeah, it's just that he went for quality. I've got this much money, I want quality. So who could I go for? So when they cast Oliver Reed in Gladiator, like Tarantino went nuts. He's like, this is such one of the coolest badass, actors in the 1970s, and you kick
Yeah,
everybody's butt and everything else, and they cast him in this, and he died on set. I mean, he was
yeah,
he was overjoyed about that because it was about who it was, like the flavor of back then. You know what I mean?
mhm, yeah.
And that's sort of what, if you think about this dude's an uber nerd thinking about everything, all the movies and stuff from 50 years ago, that's what he's into. So he's not into, he wouldn't care if it was, somebody really famous, Harrison Ford or something like that, as
No,
Vincent
yeah,
Vega. No, he wants the right person,
yeah.
not the top billing person. And that made all the production studios kind of nervous about his stuff,
Right.
because he never, with the exception of the stars he made, like Samuel L.
Right.
Jackson and some of the others, like they were all nervous about his picks. So
Well, he did Brad Pitt and Leonardo
oh,
DiCaprio,
I,
right?
I,
Like
I
so
was just
that's
about to
yeah.
say he did Brad Pitt in
Eventually,
Inglourious Basterds. Yeah,
but they're
yeah.
not. I don't know if they were at the
Um,
top of their. I think they all were a little bit down too. Their stock was a little bit down at the time he did that movie too.
well, but then Brad Pitt also did Once Upon a Time in Hollywood. So as did Leonardo
What
DiCaprio.
did I say? Did I
So
say
I
Once
think,
Upon a Time in the West? That's what
yeah,
I
yeah,
was
you did.
talking about. I was
But
talking about
but
Once Upon a Time in Hollywood.
but the point is, like at that point, like when he made Pulp Fiction,
Mm,
you couldn't get an A class star to work for him because he'd be like, "Who's this guy?
yeah,
What
right,
what is this thing?" But by the time he made Inglourious Basterds, Once Upon a Time in Hollywood, they're like,
right.
"Oh, I get to work with Tarantino. Yeah, I'll take like
Yeah,
half of my normal salary just to do that because I get to
sure.
work with him and be in this movie, which will probably get like a Best Picture or something rating."
I honestly don't think there's going to be movies again like that in their lifetime where people are
You don't think
excited to
so?
be in the movie. I feel like they're just cashing paychecks now. I don't think anybody gives a darn about
All right.
feature. Hope I'm
So
wrong.
I told you, okay. So I asked you. So yours is Pulp.
Dogs and fiction,
Uh,
and then probably
what was
Hateful
it?
Eight. I think dogs,
Okay,
fiction,
so those three.
Hateful Eight.
So mine would be probably Pulp, Reservoir, and Once Upon a Time in Hollywood.
Yeah, it's good.
It,
It's a good
it
one.
to me that was his, as an all around movie that just kind of comes
Wait, but
around.
what was your
You know.
surprise? Did you tell me your surprise?
Well, no, not really. I started talking about like the pre-production junk
Right, right, right.
and how and what it
I
took
had
to
a lot
make
of
this movie.
I had a lot of like Easter egg type surprises that like the
Huh?
one I thought was the most interesting was apparently Mia and Vincent don't win the dance contest. They
What?
steal the cup from the dance contest because apparently you can hear on the radio at one point later in the film that Jack Rabbit Slims lost their dance cup to a theft or something like that. I couldn't find
Really? I didn't know that.
I
Yeah.
couldn't find it. I couldn't hear it. So I didn't want to have that be my biggest
Hmm.
surprise. It probably would
Yeah.
be if I had verified it. But I was watching the scene where the guy's waiting in the bathroom
Yeah.
after John Travolta and Samuel Jackson, and then he pops out and tries die,
Yeah.
you
Yeah.
nuts.
Yeah.
And first of all, did you notice the bullet holes are in the wall before he starts shooting?
Okay. Actually,
I
that
didn't
that
know
is my
that.
biggest. That is my biggest
That is a big
surprise.
one. I didn't know about that. But anyway, I was
Not
looking
that
at
part, but it's who that is.
it's who
That's my
that
biggest
is
surprise.
what I was going to talk about.
That's my biggest surprise.
I was looking at it and I was like, he looks a lot like the drag queen from Wedding Singer. And so I
Yes.
looked it up and I was like, sure enough, it is. And he's the brother of David Arquette, Patricia Arquette,
Now
Rosanna Arquette,
sister.
and sister now. Well, no, he's actually dead. He died
Oh no, he
about
passed.
10 years ago.
But
Yeah.
but but I think he
But
was a
yes,
sister. But
he did actually transition. Yeah,
yes,
that's right.
yes.
Yep.
So
That's
so
true.
that was I read that, and I didn't notice it. That's why
Mhm.
it was the biggest surprise to me. You're right. That is my biggest surprise. Thank you.
Oh, okay. That's an interesting one. All right.
No,
Yeah.
no, because I read it and I was like, what the? And I didn't notice it when I watched it. And then I went back and looked again. I was like, oh my God, that
Yeah,
is.
I was looking at
Uh,
his face and I was like, man, is that the guy from Wedding Singer? It can't
yeah,
be.
right.
And it
Yeah,
was hard to look up because he's
yeah.
uncredited in Pulp Fiction. So I had to do like a little more research on IMDb, and I finally found it, and it was, it's the same guy. Anyway,
that's it. Yeah,
so it
I think
sounds like
that probably was my biggest surprise, actually.
Yeah, that's a good one.
Because all the rest of it, I kind of,
I didn't know whether they were real. There were some comments. Apparently there's an ad for Jackrabbit Slims on the radio during the ear slicing scene in Reservoir Dogs.
Really?
And I was like, that's interesting. That's a connection. Yeah. Jimmy and Harvey Keitel's character are supposed to be brothers. That's interesting. I don't know if I have that verified, so I'm not going to call that my biggest surprise. But it sounds like both of us are toasting. I think there's not much drama there. But is Pulp Fiction your Pulp? Did it get pole position as your favorite Tarantino movie?
Pulp Fiction? Yeah, I think so. I don't think I don't think you can look at, like, I've never had a bestseller, but I don't know if I would like to have a bestseller right out of the gate.
Yeah.
Because
you get the sophomore slump.
Ken Kesey, we talked about before.
Right.
And his first book was One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest. And you've never heard of any of the other books he's ever written.
I read Sometimes a Great Notion. I did actually read,
but and they're critical successes. Like, critics loved them, but it's kind of like, oh, what did this guy ever do, type of thing.
Right. Yeah,
and so there's that sophomore slump, like you said. Tarantino just didn't have that. He just kept kind of upping his game on a lot of stuff, and maybe got lucky.
He took a hit with Jackie Brown. He took a hit with Jackie Brown. He wasn't. He
did.
He wasn't a golden boy for a few years though, and then I think
he did.
It was Inglourious Bastards was the one that brought him back as a legit, like, everybody.
Yeah, I mean, Grindhouse wasn't that popular.
I don't think that was a big hit. Yeah.
As a artist though, he's always been kind of stable. Like he's been an artist, and despite all the kind of like forced, people are trying to make him racist and all this other stuff. He's always been like, F off type of thing, which I think is the best message you can have. So I was thinking about this. I think if you look on Wikipedia or something, it says that he is the probably most acclaimed director of our generation, of his generation.
I guess I kind of think of him as being a little bit older than me, but yeah, I think that's fair. He's 10 years. Best of some generation, yeah.
So 64, 63, something like that.
Spike Lee's pretty widely acclaimed. He's the same.
Okay. And the two of them don't get along. If you looked at it, like, is he our Kubrick? Like that would be the only one I would like look at. Like, and I say that with, like, I don't think he's as good as Kubrick. You don't think so?
I think Kubrick is like a genuine genius in terms of the vision he brings to every single film. I don't like Kubrick's films as much as I like Tarantino's. They're not as enjoyable to me to watch, but I think that you just think of like 3 or 4 of the big ones, and they're just phenomenal. Spartacus, 2001, The Shining, and those are completely different films, and they're just completely immaculately done. They're just brilliantly done movies. I don't think anybody compares. I think Kubrick might be the greatest director of all time. So I'm not saying Tarantino's not good by comparing him, but I think that Kubrick is I don't think anybody touches him. So
I'm not disagreeing. I'm in there with you, man. If we had to look at, like, if we were at the pearly gates and they said, Dave, who's the best director, in your generation, I think I would have to go with Tarantino.
Yeah, I think that's fair. I could probably spend a little time thinking about it, but just the fact that I have to think about it so much. I mean, when I saw Reservoir Dogs, we did the episode on Smells Like Teen Spirit on Nevermind, and that was the effect Reservoir Dogs had on me. I was like, this is the movie I've been waiting to see. This is the movie of my generation. This is phenomenal. Yeah. I could never say too much good about this movie. It just hit me like a thunderbolt. I don't know if it's the age. I worry about that sometimes, because I was reading about this movie and I was like, is something going to come along? Because they talked about how Pulp Fiction kind of rejuvenated film. It made everybody feel like, oh, there's still something to be done in film today. And it brought in this wave of great indie films. And I'm still waiting for that to happen again. But I wonder, am I just not going to like it because I'm too old? Or would I actually enjoy that? I don't know. I almost wanted to call my dad and ask him how he felt about Tarantino. Did that hit you the way it hit me?
Just to see. Yeah. I think it, personally, I don't really give a shit about that generation feels about it. This is ours. You know what I mean?
It's my experience in life just going to be that I hate everything from now on. Is it possible to be thrilled by something when you're older, or you just dead inside, and you don't like anything.
Oh, that's interesting.
That's why I wanted to compare with him. Like, did this do anything
yeah.
for you? The movies are better in the 90s than they are today. So, I mean, I don't think that's controversial even. But for Dave McArthur, this is me signing off. Peace out, everybody.
And for Dr. Clint Lanier, it's me signing off.
I gotta get that PhD. I'm lagging behind.
Yeah, it doesn't take much.
No, I got mine just like 8 years of your life or
corn
whatever.
Pops. Yeah.
All
right, brother.
All right. Bye.
Bye, everybody.
That's it for episode 100 of Toasting the Classics. For those playing along at home, you'll have to stay tuned to find out what we'll be drinking when we talk about The Who's rock opera album Tommy. We'll be back on our normal 2-week schedule for these full-length shows, but watch your feed for something a little different in the near future. If you'd like to get in touch, please send us an email at toastingtheclassics@gmail.com. Send us show ideas, comments, complaints, and let us know your top 3 Tarantino films. Check out my blog at theattractivenuisance.com and follow us on Twitter at @reactivenuisance. Our music was written by Michelle McArthur. See you next time on Toasting the Classics.